Hey guys, this will be video 4 for the how to design build a custom sparkle flying V per 1950s specs. And I think it's been close to 2 weeks since I've done a video on this particular guitar. I'm almost certain it's been that long. Primarily because, as I mentioned in the last video talking about the hollow body flying V, I wanted to get it caught up with this guitar because I knew I was getting ready to start finishing the necks. And when I build necks, I like to build, if I'm building multiple guitars that are of the same design, I like to build at least 2 to 3 necks at one time. It's terribly slow and agonizing if you just build one neck at a time, unless you're only building one guitar. But when you're really moving into like a state of production, you need to start thinking along those lines of, okay, I've got a design here, and I'm not talking about this, but let's say you've got a custom design, and you wanna start, and you've sold one, or maybe you've sold three, or you've sold seven, and you see that there's money there. That's when you need to transition into how do you refine operations so that once you set up your machinery and or your jigs, it's just as easy to build 3 necks at one time, if not 10 necks, as it is it's probably easier to do that than it would be to build. I know for a fact, let me clarify this. It's easier to build 3 necks at the same time than it would be to build those 3 necks at 3 different times. Okay, so that ought to make perfect sense because of all of the setup. If you've done any sort of carpentry, especially when it's custom. So let me reel myself back in and determine what it is I want to talk about here. And let me stop. Let me clear my throat because I'm going to get a drink of water. I've been doing some routing, and I'll be right back. Okay, so anyway, I got the necks to a point to where I felt like it was definitely time to make a video, and this video is primarily going to be focusing on just that, neck construction, and I'm going to get a little bit more technical probably than I wanted to because it's been so long since I've done a video about showing you guys how to actually build a neck. And I could find the videos, but it's literally probably like 30 videos back, and it might apply to a 50s Les Paul versus rather than this guitar. Not that they're really all that different, but there is a little bit. So what have we got in front of us? Let me just do a bit of a flyby, and let's talk about the order of operations that I elected to go with. I had mentioned in the last video, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to take this paint work. I had mentioned that I was going to take it up to 100%. I don't know why I said that. I wanted to take it up to 100% black, and then maybe come in and do the binding, and then do 7 to 10 coats of clear. But I had mentioned the 100% finish and then do the binding. I wouldn't recommend that. But I did want to do as much of the black as I could, because the thing about let me get this cup out of the way. The thing about the flying when the thing about when you're working with 130-year-old wood, what some people would see as divots and mistakes and a lot of horrific things that need to be filled. Man, don't go too far with that, because you might as well have built it out of poplar and or maple. So I was teetering between this line of how much of this do I leave showing the imperfections of the wood, and how far do I take it before it starts looking like a brand new guitar. And when you're building hand guitars the way I build them, when I list them for sale, I list them as used, because I've never once been able to build a guitar that was like precise all the way to the, once it was strung up and finished and getting ready to go in a box and ship, internationally. No one, even whomever was buying it, they knew that once they got that guitar, it was going to have nicks and dings and little imperfections of where my chisel might have slipped, or hell, maybe I just had a bad day, and was doing not poor work, but just kind of, like player. Because I built a Harley once, and it was really cool, and this is going to make sense. But there's two types of Harley riders. There's either the rider or builder, and there's either the rider and or like the collector, like the guy that wants the really shiny chrome. Well, I'm a rider type, and the Harley that I built was a phenomenal, beautiful bike, early 90s Evo engine, but I intentionally selected all of my parts based on the fact that they had some scratches, they had some imperfection. That way, once I started riding on the gravel roads of Alabama and Tennessee, I wasn't worried about scratching up the bike. So same thing with my guitar building. It's you know it's got a lot of nicks and dings. So let me again reel myself back in. But I just wanted to show this guitar because obviously this one is going to sell, and then we'll talk about the order of operations and would I do it again. I think so. I like the idea, and the way I did it, I'll only cover this briefly. Uh, I've had this for a while, but basically you want to really tape it off and protect it, because uh, as you're doing your black, about every 7th to 10th coat, I like to stop and wet sand it and find out where it is that I am. And then if you do that, you want to pull that off, and you want to have all of this wood sealed, because you're literally sitting there with soap and water, wet sanding, and all this is getting wet, even the channels, excuse me, and you have to make certain that that's all sealed. So hope I didn't waste any time talking about the technical stuff there. But, it was for a worthy cause, because to answer the question, would I do it again? Yeah, I like that. I like the way that worked out, because it allowed me to take it up to a point to where then I can really start determining how close to perfect I got the body, yet not worrying about damaging, binding, and or if I needed to come in and do some real hard, because as I did 3 or 4 coats of this, there were times where I just realized, man, it needs some really a lot of attention. I'm not going to do it because I'll scratch it up. But there were times where I would sit it on the table like this right here, and I would just eyeball it, and I would just cut 90% of that black off to get it level. And if you had your binding up there, and your binding was a certain thickness, well, by the time you're finished with that guitar, it's not where you started out. Okay, and I won't go any further about that, because if you guys are watching a video like this, you've already experienced that, where you designed everything, you had everything engineered, only to get into the project and realize this stuff swells considerably, first off, and then you're chasing a paper tiger, sometimes trying to get it under control. So I was able to really dig into it, and also that's another reason why it's been 2 weeks, because I didn't want to do 15 videos showing how I ended up with, honest to God, this is close to 20 something coats of individual applications. They're not heavy mill thickness, but definitely 20 to 22 different times of spraying, sanding, cleaning, spraying, sanding, pulling off the cardboard paper, wet sanding, and all that jazz, and getting back to you know where I want to be with the guitar. So very happy with it. And the next thing is definitely to start fitting the neck. If I had the neck, then it would be time to glue the neck in, and then start finishing the guitar. And it's amazing. You might look at this and go, "Oh, you got a long way to go." You'd be shocked at how quickly they come together once you're at this state right here. Because I can do the binding in a matter of about an hour and a half. Let it dry overnight. Clip it the next day. Sand it a little bit. Level it. Round it over just a little. Start shooting the clear nitro lacquer, and then voila, you got a guitar. Okay, let me check the time. Wow, 9 minutes. Yeah, lot longer of an intro than I wanted to spend there, but I think I probably covered a lot of ground that was well overdue, because it has been so long. So the next thing for this guitar will be the binding. And as I had mentioned, I'm going to come in with tape now that I've got it where I want it. And I had one little fleek out right there. And let me slow down a little bit and make sure I really, really show this guitar. But the next thing before I forget, I'm going to tape off all the black again, then do the binding. And I'm even going to come up here and tape this off as well. That guarantees that I don't risk damaging the black and or the gel coat of the gold sparkle. Very cool configuration. I have not found one of these before. I'm sure it's been built before, but I have not seen. Well, I'm sure I know I have because I've built how many of these? Two or three of these already that were Flying V sparkle tops. I think I've built two red, and then this will be the third, which will be the gold. So very cool. It's a very unique design, and I think a lot of the reason why it hasn't been done is because I had mentioned in one of my videos, Gretsch kind of cornered the market when they came out in the 1950s with the Silverjet. I think the Silverjet would have been the first sparkle top guitar, and because they had the Gretsch Drum Company. Well, once that happened, Fender might have been able to do one for Buddy Rich or Buck Owens or somebody like that, but they weren't. They probably weren't going to be able to start mass producing sparkle top guitars because it would have started looking like they were trying to chase Gretsch. And the same thing with Gibson. And Gibson wasn't a very flamboyant, flashy company. And I'm going to stop because I'm not a historian, but I say that to say this. The fact that this is a Flying V, that's probably the only reason you never saw the Sparkle Flying V back in the 50s because well, Gretsch was already doing it. And I think what would have been cool if Gretsch and Gibson had paired up, and because I know they were really going after the Fender competition, they were losing, or the sales they were losing. It would have been cool maybe if uh, Gibson and Gretsch had teamed up and done something crazy like this. That would have been pretty cool. Anyway, but they didn't, and here we are, what, 150, 300 years later, and we're still copying Gibson, so they must have done something right. And Gretsch. So, all right, let me check the time again. 12 minutes. What do we want to talk about? I think at this point, one thing I'll say this as a first time when I first really started building, there were points where I would hit walls, and I would either lose interest in a project, or I would kind of get to the point where, oh man, I dread doing that binding because I've never done binding before. And sometimes they would start getting tabled. And I think it was more so fear based of screwing up what you really hoped would turn out incredibly well. So when in doubt of your abilities, do a strap test. Put your groovy little strap buttons on there, and get out the motivating items that make us want to play guitar in the first place, and start determining, how does she feel on your person, and how does it look if we start going with some sort of crazy, leopard print. It's looking pretty cool, and it kind of gets you a little bit excited, and then you can do a little bit of air guitar here, but it's also very critical that you start determining, because I've already engineered through all this stuff, but you start determining things like, how is everything going to fit, feel, and hang. Oh, I hit my light up there. How is everything going to, I wish I had more room, but how is everything going to fit and feel? And when you're through playing the guitar and it's laying on the couch, is it inviting? Does it really make you want to play guitar? And I'm of the school of thought. I hate guitar cases. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. Because once you put a guitar in a case, it's almost like you forget you own it. Every one of my guitars, they're laying around the living room. They're hanging on racks. Or one's laying on the bed. One's in the kitchen, leaning against the refrigerator. There's always a guitar somewhere that will keep you playing guitar and or building. So. And then you start, and that'll kind of get you excited and get you back on track a little bit. And then, maybe you're more so into, maybe building your own strap. I'm about to take this bull hide leather. This is insanely thick, and build a custom strap. So either way, you really can't go wrong with a guitar that is kind of so loud and everything. But with this gold, you can also see, wow, even like the big cat print looks pretty cool. So a lot of fun. And I've noticed that for the most part, the guys that play the Flying V, they're a pretty eclectic group of people. And I love that. As I've mentioned, this is not my favorite guitar. It's not my favorite design. I don't just love playing it, but man, are they ever fun to build. And if you've ever considered building a guitar, they're not difficult, but they're not easy either. Because I had mentioned keeping these straight lines perfectly straight and symmetrical, that's not for the faint at heart. And you would look at it and think, oh man, it's just a couple of triangles and a couple of turns. It'll humble you very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. I didn't know that I can't. Let me talk about the binding quickly. Then I'm going to pause the video, and then we'll go into a deep dive about the neck construction. So when you're at this point, what's really critical, this is so important. And if you're not paying attention, rewind and really sit down and focus for a little while, because this will save you an enormous amount of time and effort. You very much need to engineer through the thicknesses of your binding and how they're going to finish out. Right now, I'm catching my fingernail very seriously. Way too much more than to expect lacquer to build up and fill that in. I could, but I don't want to go that route. But I've learned my lesson about the last thing you want is to have this flood. See, right now, just barely catching my fingernail. So if this body was really close to, a finished state where I wanted it, that would probably be the perfect route channel. And that's a 16th of an inch for a 60 thousandths binding. And if you want to make note of that, just think it's a very simple offset. And any router off the shelf, you can pretty much achieve that with a smaller bearing. So, but in my case, where I'm going with this, the cream would be really cool. This is kind of an ivory cream, and it would be really beautiful, but I don't think it would be nearly as incredible unless it had a black accent between the gold sparkle and the cream. So what I'm going to do, I've got a little jig I've designed based on the Stuart McDonald offset that I'm going to route that channel ever so slightly deeper to receive a 20 thousandths black and then the 60 thousandths cream. And man, oh man, you talk about it. This is hard to do on camera. Let me see if I can just stop talking and just do it now, because it's, see, my router channel is a little bit deeper than a quarter, and this is only a quarter of an inch, so it's trying to fall down. But I'm doing the best I can to explain to you. That black accent will make this guitar it'll just so pop. It'll so come alive, especially when you come up here and the black goes around the corner. Man, this is hard to, the flying, this first off, it's hard to do, okay? But when you get the black coming around the corner, it just makes this gold, it's almost like you've cut it in. If you've ever done a painting, it's like it's truly cut in, and it just really defines the gold, okay? So what else can I talk about? I've already done a mock-up on this guitar. There's no sense in doing that again. In the last video where I just determined whether we're going to do the Floyd Rose or we're going to do a hardtail, all that stuff. It's very important that you remain emotionally detached, but just be prepared that once the guitar sells, to really go into high gear and machine for a Floyd Rose, or to discipline yourself to keep your mouth shut and not try to talk them out of just doing a hardtail, even though you might be thinking, oh man, this thing would be so cool with a Floyd Rose. It's not your guitar. You built it, you're the builder, but it's their guitar now. And I think that's where a lot of guys that build guitars, they get in trouble because they get too attached to it. And you got to stay detached. Okay, so let me pause the video. I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about the body. And I'll do another video covering this guitar over here but it'll be very limited because I'm going to do a fairly deep dive talking about net construction and how things are very different once you change the thickness of the body and even how you rough it out of the board. So let me pause. I'll get set up and I'll get a drink of water. We'll go from there.